boys and girls, welcome to today, this week's one. Don't really have too much to talk about really. Haven't had a very busy or productive week, if I'm honest. I've been quite quiet. Work has dropped off a little bit, so sitting about, moping, doing not much. Conserving what little money I have. As is always the way. I-30 had an MOT today and that passed. I didn't expect it was going to fail, not that new. I mean, what is it? It's 2016, it's done 78,000. The only minor thing they picked it up for, which I already knew about, offside rear brake is binding slightly, marginally. It's nothing major. So I need to have a look at that. See if I can free it up a little bit. But other than that, it's been a dull, boring, uneventful week. So, God knows. Maybe making some changes in the near future. I might get rid of the I-30. Thinking about getting rid of a few things that cost me quite a bit of money each month. Just bring that down, you know, kind of take a couple of steps back, regroup as it were, and then move forward, see where I get to. But I don't know at the moment. I haven't made a full decision. I'm just kind of thinking aloud. Because if I get rid of the car, if I get shot of the car, because the car is now worth more than I owe on it. So I'll actually be positive if I get shot of it. I don't have to give it back or cancel an agreement. I can sell it, pay off whatever's owed, and keep the rest. So I have an asset. Woo! That will save me $298.72 each month. Although to be fair, I've only got another 12 months and the damn thing's paid for. There's no issues. There's definitely no rot. It's a pretty mint motor that is by far the cheapest vehicle to run on the fleet other than the finance payments. But if I keep it for another year and pay it off, it will be the cheapest car on the fleet by a long stretch of the imagination. I mean, it does 58, 60 miles a gallon average. It doesn't cost anything on VED, annual tax. The tyres, crikey, they're about 72 quid each, I think, fitted and balanced. So it literally costs sod all. So I'm kind of having an argument with myself there. Probably knock Sky on the head. I don't really need that anymore. I use it, but I don't, if that makes sense. I mean, we've got Amazon, we've got Netflix, we've got everything else. We don't really need Sky. So I'll probably knock that on the head. That would be £71 a month. Yeah. It's a bit pointless waste, isn't it, if you think about it? But no, I'm just trying to regroup, because obviously with Bert's business and what I'm doing with the car channel now, it's a case of we've spent a little bit more money that we didn't have just to move forward with our respective ventures. Obviously the car channel for me, Bert's Arts and Crafts, Lemonade Designs for her, and yeah, my grand total's gone up a little bit again. Nowhere near as bad as it got to. I mean, I think I got to about 54,000 in debt in total, and that was during 2017. That was early 2017. I'm now I'm a gnat's whisker over 40 grand. I had got it down to the mid 30s. But no, I'm just thinking about if I'm going to end up going full time, which is a plan, then chances are I need to save at least 400 quid a month in order to make it financially viable to a point where I can still save money, if that makes sense. Because obviously if you never put anything to one side, you're living exceptionally dangerously. Okay, you always need to have something going to one side for a rainy day. And if I'm going to go full time, in order to do that, I'm going to need to save 400 quid a month from what I'm paying at the moment. The car, Sky, that gets me very, very close. I think it's something like 370 something quid in total when you add it all together, because the Sky's 70 and change, 70 and something. So that gets me very close. But we shall see. It's quite funny with this talking about potentially going full time and finances and things like that. Even with this, the IR35 changes, because IR35's always technically been there, they're just going to enforce it slightly differently if it goes through. But let's be honest, it's 99% certain it's not going to be shelved. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing all what all various agencies are saying, and what companies themselves are saying. And it's not just the IT crowd. You see, this is the thing. When you talk about IR35, you think about the IT contractors. 6 figures a year paying less than 20 grand a year in tax. And you sit there thinking, yeah, kick them in the nuts. That's perfectly fine. Perfectly acceptable. What you don't think about is the warehouse workers. Or truck drivers. Farm labourers, for example. They don't really earn 6 figures a year. At least I don't. Don't know about you guys, but I don't earn 6 figures a year. And when you factor in my accountancy costs, national insurance payments, because I always make sure I pay those, the corporation tax and then personal tax on top, I'm only really about 1,800 quid a year, 2 grand maybe, in a good year, better off than if I was on the equivalent wage PAYE. So really I'm only doing what you can claim for, if that makes sense. And of course I've got an accountant, so there's that. But it is quite funny, because I'm looking at a lot of the larger companies and they're going, well, we'll just get rid of contractors. But the problem is they can't take all the contractors full time, and this is what a lot of people have forgotten. This is what a lot of people don't realise. Larger companies take on agency staff, whether it's warehouse, truck driving, whatever, office stuff, whatever, to cover a requirement. And that requirement might last 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year or two, and then dry up. But there will usually always be a month or two where the requirement for those staff doesn't exist. And so, like myself at the moment, sitting at home 2-day, maybe 3-day weeks. Well, last week was a 2-day one, but before that I've been having 3-day weeks. And if a company wanted to take us all on as full-time staff, as a lot of people mistakenly believe is going to happen, well, they're going to have a number of staff members, whether it's, again, warehouse, office, truck driving, whatever, sitting around doing nothing because there's no work for them for 2, maybe 3 months of the year. The company's gross margins are already really tight because for the last, 30 odd years we've been in a race to the bottom. Wages have been getting squeezed, wage rises have been lower, final salary pensions aren't what they used to be to save money. And we've been in this constant race to the bottom thinking that, oh well, that pint of milk only costs £1.70. Yeah, that's a win. Bollocks. Earn 10 grand a year more and pay £2 for your bleeding milk. Seriously, you know what I mean? You don't need a race to the bottom. It's absolutely bloody pointless. And eventually, the problem with the race to the bottom is you hit it. And to all the people, oh yeah, well, don't leave bloody agencies. But when you go on holiday, when you have sick days, paternity or maternity leave or whatever, they bring in a temp. Where do you think they find those temps? Just saying. Some companies are finding a workaround, because there is a workaround. The end user client. So the person that pays the temporary worker. If they're classed as a small business, that's what, a turnover of 10 million or less a year, and I think less than 100 staff full time. I think. Well, I'm doing this off the top of my head at the moment, and I wasn't thinking about talking about this. Then those temporary staff working for that company or being paid by that company don't qualify. They can continue the way they've always been continuing. So there's a couple of companies that are operating a workaround. Other companies are offering, like the IT crowd for example, an IR35 insurance package. Now, I had a shifty into that to see, obviously it covers this, and if you do get audited, the insurance will cover whatever HMRC reckons you owe them, so on and so forth. And I was looking at it thinking, okay, if you're on 6 figures a year, that package, you buy it. Just buy it. But if you're on an average wage, or slightly below average, warehouse worker, office staff, truck driver, you might as well just pay full rate tax. Because it's insanely expensive. So a lot of companies, the wealthier people that you think you're going to get, we're going to jab them right in the stomach. You're not. They'll take on the insurance packages, or they'll simply create subsidiary companies that ultimately end up being their end client. And it's something I've seen in a couple of agencies that has been doing the rounds. All of a sudden, you'll get an invoice, okay? If you work for an agency, you'll get an invoice. You submit your hours, they produce an invoice for you, and it says the client, Joe Bloggs and Son, X amount of hours on weekday rate, weekend rate, whatever, and how much you're being paid. Now I'm starting to see that the invoice is for something like services rendered or hours worked. There's no company name of who you've been working for on them. And the company that is ultimately paying me isn't the agency. It's a separate company. So there's all these workarounds coming into effect as well. But at the end of the day, a lot of the larger firms who just, they're just like, what, sod it, give up, we don't want the contractors. Like I said, they can't employ everybody. So what they're going to do is they'll take on, say, a third of the staff and expect that third of the staff to make up the difference. And then at real peak tight periods where they really, really need an agency guy, like 2 or 3 months of the year, for example, they'll just hire in who's ever dumb enough to work for an agency. So I can see this backfiring big style. Contractors, funnily enough, the people who are tax dodging wankers, raise £305 billion in tax revenue, which I think is kind of odd, and I just don't believe it. 305 billion when HMRC's tax receipts was 587 billion in total. I think somebody who's coming up with these figures, because I've seen these arguments, I've got to kind of take on all the arguments, let's be fair. I've seen these figures banding around and I'm thinking, are you just taking into account all companies paying whatever tax? Because it's impressive when somebody says, 305 billion, and you're sitting there and you're like, but that would mean 280 something billion is all that they get from other tax receipts. And there are far more people on PAYE than there are contractors, let's be honest. So, because I think, I posted something like that on Twitter and Facebook, and since I posted it, I've been sitting there going, but it doesn't make any sense. There's got to be something wrong with that figure somewhere. There's got to be something that we're not being told, I've started something now. Like I said, when I started this, I wasn't expecting to talk about this, so I haven't really, planned anything. Oh, see, tax receipt. Oh, right, yeah. So in 2018-19, the value of HMRC tax receipts for the United Kingdom amounted to approximately 623.4 billion. Hmm. So that's an increase of 307.8 billion on 2000 and 2001. If you give a crap. It's kind of weird when you're looking at this, because, yeah, there it is again, 305 billion. That's just odd. That's got to be. That's just. That doesn't make any sense at all. 305 billion. Mm. Yeah, there are around. Yeah, here you go. I'll read the damn sentence, right? There are around 5 million self-employed workers in Britain, thought to generate roughly 305 billion for the economy. Damn. So, that was a Telegraph thing, that was. There were others. It was just the one I clicked on before you all fall off your pogo sticks. Referenced it again. Yeah, so 305 billion. So that means that nearly half, just under half, of the tax receipts for HMRC last year were contractors. And a lot of the large companies that employ them are going to do away with those contractors and try to remember that contractors are paid more than PAYE staff. You know, I mean, what is it? The father-in-law used to work in one company. It was in London. And he was full-time. And I think he got something like 50 grand a year, something like that, I think it was. The contractors that were hired in to do pretty much the exact same job as him were all north of 100,000. Now, again, he was in the IT world. He's since left full-time employment because he got fed up with it and he's become a contractor. So, you know. So it does kind of go to show you that if they do take these contractors on full-time, not only are the contractors going to lose a huge amount of income unless they find a workaround, which is very, very probable, but you're going to be taxing, okay, 25%, 50 grand compared to 13% of 100 grand. I mean, you're not really going to be, and I say 13%, it's probably more because you got NI, if they're intelligent, they're paying it, and you got other taxes generated because obviously their accountant will be charging them money and the accountant will be paying money on that money that he's taking as paying, and so on and so forth. But you sit there and you think, well, you know, chances are, they're realistically, if you're over a six figures a year, you're paying more than 13%. I mean, you're paying even if you've got the best accountant in the world, you're paying probably 20%. You know, and it just strikes me as odd. And again, of course, you've got the people who are going to suffer who have debts. Like I said, there are a couple of things I can do. You know, get rid of the I-30, for example. Okay, whilst I could afford it, fine. When I can't afford it, get rid of it. You know, I've got 3 cars. You know, I can get rid of one. And again, get rid of Sky. I don't tend to use it anymore. So there's things I can do. There's things that we can all do. But then you've got to think about people in a situation that can't do any of these things. And their pay is going to decrease. Is that going to put more burden on them? Are they going to be able to make their liabilities? And if they can't, is that going to force them into bankruptcy or debt consolidation thing that writes off 70% of the debt or whatever it is? And in that situation, well, what do you think causes an economic recession for a country? Non-payment of debt. So there's a whole load of things that I see this going catastrophically wrong. There was an old saying, we're going back years, probably a century to be fair, and it was the aristocrat, the hierarchy of society now, the rulers of society, and it was, you know, talking about social democracy, giving people more power over their own governance and so on and so forth. And the saying was, if you give the working man a whip, the first person he will whip will be himself. And I'm looking at certain changes coming in, and I'm looking at other changes that have come in over the years, you know. And I'm thinking, it's a bloody accurate saying, isn't it? Because you do, oh, well, yes, we're going to fight back, and then all of a sudden, why has unemployment gone up? Why are we in a recession? Why hasn't our wages gone up? Why don't we have the final salary pensions that we used to have? And so on and so forth. Yeah, let's only pay 75p for a loaf of bread. Whoa, rock on. Well, it's £1.20 or whatever. For a loaf of bread. Whoa, rock on. You know, you're sitting there and you're bitching and moaning, oh, petrol costs £1.28.9 a litre. That's bloody expensive. Water costs more. Water falls from the goddamn sky. And it costs more a litre. We're in this kind of mental, oh, everything's got to be cheap, and if everything's cheap, guess where your wages are going to go? They're not going to go that way. And then, of course, all the cheap stuff starts to increase in price, and your wages don't. It's brilliant. It's fantastically weird. It's just such an odd system. It was like my argument after they did the flat rate VAT thing. It was a case of most of us don't need to be VAT registered, okay? We're under the threshold. And so with the flat rate VAT, it was like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. And so under the flat rate VAT, I was paying somewhere in the region of about £4,000 a year extra to HMRC because I was charging VAT. And I was keeping a smaller share of that. I was paying $4,400, I think, the last year I did VAT, and I took home an extra about £4,000. So it was pretty much identical. And then they decided, right, we're going to do this. And so most of us just deregistered from VAT. We didn't need to be registered for VAT in the first place. And you're sitting there and you're like, well, there's 5 million contractors. Say 1 million people were in my situation. Average, and remember, a lot of these contractors are IT guys on 6 figures a year. Okay, so to say 1 million were in my situation where they were raising an extra 4,000, I mean, you do the maths on that. If we all deregistered, HMRC just took a gun to their bollocks and pulled the trigger. It's just so fantastically weird. You know, it's always struck me as odd. I don't know why. It's probably because I've been self-employed. Hey, I worked this out. When I was a farm labourer, I had to have the construction industries card because of the way the farms I worked on paid us. You know, I was kind of a travelling round kind of labourer. I worked from Ballantrae all the way down to close to where my dad lives. Corriton Refinery, Corringham, Stanford, Hope, that area. There was a farm there. I worked on that for a while as well. And we had to be effectively self-employed because we got cash in a paycheck and in a envelope, and that's how we were paid. Kind of dodgy really, but whatever. And I worked out that I'm 35, I got my first job at 16, paying job at 16. Yeah, I didn't have a paper round. Lived too far away from residential housing to have a paper round, because my dad lives in the middle of nowhere. And I was 16, and I've spent just over 4 years PAYE. Every other year, and remember I'm 35, every other year I've been self-employed. How weird is that? And now I'm actually thinking about going full-time for the company I'm driving for at the moment, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know whether I'll be able to do this. Yeah. I want next week off. You can't have it. What do you mean? But no, it does strike me as funny. It just strikes me as weird, that's all. Just the way we seem to do things. Oh, we're doing better. How do you sit there and you think, well, you've just made however many million people worse off. and in turn they're making HMRC worse off. And now you're having to look at other tax legislation to try and recoup your losses. And then when that doesn't work, what do you think they're going to tax? If a lot of these large companies get rid of their contractors like they're saying they're going to be doing, because it's just easier for them, and they only take on a percentage of those contractors as full-time, but make them work harder, for argument's sake, what do you think they're going to put tax on then? Petrol? Gas? Electricity? Well, they're going to have to on electricity because of EVs. Electronic vehicles, let's be honest. You know, could they raise VAT? Potentially. Council tax might go up. Always goes up, let's be honest. What are they going to put tax on? What are they going to raise it? Because that's what happens. As soon as the government starts losing money, it raises it from somewhere else. They'll tax the wealthy, Bill. Bollocks. People have been trying to tax the wealthy for centuries. Literally centuries. You know, Magna Carta wasn't formed for the peasant folk, it was formed for the barons, to protect them from the royal family, from unfair taxation. And that's what, the 1200s? They've been trying to do it forever. And it never works. There's always a workaround. There's always a way to get, round the system. Oh well, communism makes it all fair, does it? Berlin Wall fell, all of a sudden all these billionaire Russian oligarchs started waddling out. What, you think they were living in abstract poverty before the wall fell down? It never works. It's the way we do tax instead of, a rule. For example, you tax a company, corporation tax, it finds a workaround so it doesn't pay it. Well, how about introducing a law where if you are a company for profit and you have 1,000 employees or more, why don't you bring in legislation that means the company has to provide fully comprehensive medical insurance to its employees as a family policy, so its employees and its employees' direct family, like spouses and children. And then any medical thing, you could link it to your national insurance number. And any medical thing you do in the hospital, your national insurance number, NHS claims it back. You're not taxing the company, you're just changing the law. Employment law. And then NHS, can claim back the money of the medical care for the people whose national insurance numbers are linked to the insurance policy. And you could change the definition of fully comprehensive medical cover, because in this country, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but all your emergency or major surgeries are not covered by fully comprehensive medical insurance. That's covered by the NHS. So maybe change that. You could save the NHS billions. But what you're going to do, increase corporation tax. And then there's going to be 12 other loopholes come up, and they're still not going to pay it. It's just bizarre the way we look at a situation and go, that's how we do it. And then there's so many loopholes, that legislation's like a goddamn sieve. You just look at it and you think, okay, fair enough. Tally-ho. Worked in the public sector, Bill. Yeah, because the government was the end user client paying everyone. In the private sector, the end user client could be anyone. Literally anyone. Doesn't have to necessarily be the company I'm working for. The company I'm working for hires in my agency to provide services. And my agency hire me in as a service, and then my agency pay me. And maybe the agency that I work for is smaller than the agency the end user client that I'm driving for brings in. All of a sudden it's a small company. I'm being paid by a small company. I'm not being paid by the government. The government can take money from its employees, its contractors, because it's the goddamn government. Yeah, the end user client is the government. Yeah? Company I work for ain't the government. Company that pays me isn't the government. It's like my accountant said. He turned around and he said, I wouldn't worry because it's a private sector. We can do whatever we want. However they word the legislation. So it's going to be interesting to see, but like I said in an earlier upload, I'm thinking of going full time for a different reason, because it's 5 on 3 off. I get 3 days to concentrate on my car thing. That's what I'm thinking of doing it for, before anybody starts going, no, I'm doing it for a different reason, alright? I was already planning on doing it, and to be fair, I've been thinking about doing it for a while. But again, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But I'm intrigued to see what happens in April. I'm actually thinking about just staying the way I am until April to see what the difference is, and then tell you guys. You know? Is it going to be a big difference? Is it going to be a small difference? There is going to be a difference. Don't get me wrong, there will be. There has to be. But is it going to be massive, or is it going to be small? You know? Are large companies going to just get rid of contractors? Are agencies going to start going bankrupt? You know, folding left, right and centre. 5 million contractors in this country. Yeah? Say half of them get taken on full time and the other half don't need you. 2.5 million people. Retraining? Potentially. Retiring? Well, potentially. Again, potentially. Unemployed. Unable to pay their bills. Declaring bankruptcy. Most likely. I'm just curious what's going to happen. I think this is just going to be fantastically funny. But then that's just my take on it. And like I've always said, just because you believe something doesn't mean you're right. It applies to me as well as it applies to everyone else. But anyway, I think that's enough for today. My brain just ran away with this, didn't it? I didn't really think about talking about it. I was just going to talk about the car going through an MOT. And some little changes I was planning on making. But yeah, it's just an idea, just a thought process. Thinking out loud. Maybe food for thought, some of the things I've said. But anyway, I'll see you next week. Whatever I'll talk about then. Probably in here, knowing me. Hopefully the storm will have subsided. I mean, it's blue sky outside here, so it should do. You know, Storm Dennis we're on to now. Yeah, and hopefully, because I think it's gone quiet where I am because of the storms. Things haven't been getting in. So, or at least that's what they've been saying. So, I don't know. They've had their drivers sitting around doing sod all. But anyway, yeah, I shall see you in the next one. So, like, subscribe, share about, do whatever it is usually. I'll see you in the next one, next week. I've got to go edit this bollocks now. See you later.